Hey guys, Mr. Shaw here. You'll notice the landscape behind me is completely burnt to the ground. There's a ton of trees there, but all you see are stumps and black ash, and the whole ground looks really, really dark. But over here, all the trees are still verdant and green. What's happened here is that there was a forest fire, and California has a ton of them, especially right now when they're experiencing a really severe drought. The drought's been going on for a number of years, and part of the reason the drought's been so bad is because the heat from climate change has been creating this pressure system above California. It's kind of like a wall. That wall is pushing all of the cold, moist air from the ocean that gets evaporated from the Pacific up north, and then it swings back down south again. Have you ever heard about the polar vortex that cooled down Indiana for a number of years? That's the air that didn't come through California because it swung north up to the Arctic and then came back down south. Because everything has been so dry and hot, these trees can sometimes just catch fire randomly without even a lightning strike or an ignition from a cigarette or anything. And when that happens, the fire spreads so quickly because all of the brush and grass, as you can see, is pretty much dead and yellow, with just a few green leaves left to spare. These wildfires are pretty damaging, and entire landscapes, sometimes farms, sometimes houses, sometimes entire towns can be burned to the ground in a matter of a few minutes. Hey guys, it's Mr. Shaw. I'm standing underneath a whole bunch of redwood trees. You can see they go on and on super, super, super high. They're almost 250 feet tall. And one of the things that happens a lot in California where these are located is wildfires. But these trees have such thick bark, they're actually really well adapted to survive them. You can see burn marks in the trees behind me. But as you go higher and higher, the burn marks stop. The bark of the trees is usually made of dead cells anyways, and so as long as it can defend the inside and keep the water flowing up without it getting burnt out, the tree has no problem surviving. And it can keep supplying nutrients and water to the leaves up high from the roots down low. These little hollows in the trees are also usually made from burnouts, and the little decomposed part of the outside will start to break away, and then you've got a hollow underneath. And almost all the trees here are going to be affected by some amount of fire, but still the trees keep growing. This redwood is a really good example of what happens when it gets burnt out. The higher and higher you go, you realize the top of the tree is really not affected at all by the burns because the dense trunk at the bottom basically absorbed it. But you've got this entire burnt out section. It's almost split the tree in two. Redwood trees are really strong and hardy, but you can see these trees, no matter how much dense trunk they had, they didn't quite make it. The more common that wildfires get here, the more that even really strong trees like the redwoods may not be able to survive. And as long as we keep having more and more dry weather and higher and higher temperatures due to climate change, it's going to continue to be more and more common to see these wildfires knocking down redwoods here in California. Here's another example of some redwoods that have been impacted by wildfires. And the higher you go, here you can see that the branches of the trees are actually pretty burnt out at the top, at least on one side. Now, the further back you go, the ones in the front's kind of protected the ones in the back, and there's still a little bit of foliage up there. But the higher that the wildfire goes, and the faster it spreads up, and the drier the redwood is to prevent really the water from spreading through the redwood, the more likely it is that it's going to kill the tree. Inside all of these trees, you've got a lot of water stored inside of their vascular pathways, their xylem, their phloem that they're pulling up from their roots. And so those kind of provide a defense for the tree because if there's any fire that goes through, the water can put it out. But the drier the tree is, the less rain there's been, the less of that inside defense that it has once it gets through the bark. We're quite a bit higher up now, and a lot of the areas that are higher up in a park or any kind of a forested area are going to get a lot more sunlight, drying it out, and then of course a lot less shade to keep the moisture inside the ground. So you can see the wildfire really hit this higher area a lot more.